The tablet glowed against the darkness of our bedroom, its blue light cutting through the shadows like a digital blade. Alyssa had forgotten to log out again. Third time this month. I reached for it, intending to close whatever streaming app she'd left running when the screen caught my attention. A dating profile. Her face smiled back at me from a photo I'd taken last summer at Jake's baseball game. The same photo that hung in our hallway, the one where she looked genuinely happy for the first time in months. My name is Rowan Kerrick, and I'm 39 years old. I manage IT projects for a mid-sized consulting firm, which means I know my way around digital breadcrumbs. What I was looking at shouldn't have surprised me as much as it did. The profile was polished, professional, optimized for maximum appeal. Alyssa, 37, HR director. Love hiking, craft beer, and men who can make me laugh without trying too hard. Looking for someone who appreciates sarcasm, doesn't leave dishes in the sink, and knows the difference between your and your. Every detail fit me perfectly. The hiking boots I'd bought her for Christmas sat unused in our closet, but she'd always said she wanted to try it. The craft beer preference came from our early dating days when I'd introduced her to local breweries. The sarcasm, the dishes, the grammar, she was describing her ideal man using me as the template, except for one crucial detail at the bottom: relationship status, single. I sat there in the dark, tablet warming my palms, reading her bio over and over. 15 years of marriage, 2 kids, a mortgage, shared Netflix passwords, and she was advertising herself as single to strangers on the internet. The worst part? She was good at it. Really good. Her profile read like a bestseller summary, compelling, mysterious, just flawed enough to seem authentic. She'd even included that little scar above her left eyebrow from when Jake accidentally hit her with a wiffle ball, spinning it into a charming story about learning to duck. I scrolled down. Messages, dozens of them. My hands shook as I opened the first conversation thread. A guy named Trent, 40, divorced, drove a Mustang according to his profile pictures. Their conversation had been going on for 3 weeks. "Hey, beautiful, love your profile. You seem like exactly the kind of woman I've been looking for." Her response made my stomach twist. "Thank you. I have to say, your pictures caught my attention too. It's been a while since I've put myself out there, but I'm ready for something real." Something real. I glanced at the framed wedding photo on her nightstand, then back at the screen. The conversation continued, getting progressively more intimate. Not explicitly inappropriate, but the kind of emotional intimacy that belonged between spouses, not strangers. She told him about her job stress, her dreams of traveling, her favorite movies, details she'd stopped sharing with me months ago. Then I found the message that changed everything. "I'm technically still married, but it's been over for a long time. We're like roommates now. He's a good father, but we just grew apart. I'm planning to file soon, just waiting for the right time." Roommates. 15 years reduced to a housing arrangement. I kept reading, my IT training kicking in as I mentally cataloged evidence. Screenshots, timestamps, conversation patterns. The messages came in bursts. Late nights when she claimed to be working, early mornings before I woke up, lunch breaks that stretched longer than usual. There were others too. A lawyer named Brad who sent terrible jokes she pretended to find hilarious. A contractor named Mike who offered to fix things around her place, with obvious double meaning. She was juggling multiple conversations, multiple potential futures, all while sitting across from me at dinner asking about my day. The tablet showed her active status. Online now. I checked the time. 2:17 a.m. She was lying next to me, supposedly asleep, but the green dot next to her profile picture said otherwise. That's when I made the decision that would change everything. I created my own profile. It took 20 minutes to set up. I used a photo from my company's website. Professional but approachable. For the bio, I went with simple honesty. Rowan, 39. IT project manager. Recently realized I might be single and didn't know it. Love craft beer, hiking, apparently, and women who appreciate good grammar. Fair warning. I do leave dishes in the sink sometimes, but I'm working on it. The app's algorithm was efficient. Within minutes, I had matches, messages, and a clear view into a world I'd never imagined my wife inhabiting. Then, I found her profile again and swiped right. The match notification appeared instantly. We'd been paired by an algorithm that somehow knew we were perfect for each other, which would have been romantic if we weren't already married. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the message button. What do you say to your wife when she doesn't know she's talking to her husband? I decided to test the waters. Hi, Alyssa. Great profile. I have to ask, the thing about men who don't leave dishes in the sink. Is that really a deal breaker? The typing indicator appeared immediately. She was awake, phone in hand, probably lying 2 feet away from me. Her response came back fast. Ha! Not a deal breaker, but definitely a pet peeve. My husband used to do that constantly. Drove me crazy. Used to. Past tense. I typed back, used to? What changed? A longer pause this time, then, we're separated. It's complicated. Separated. News to me. Sorry to hear that. How long? Emotionally? About 6 months. We're still working out the details. 6 months. I tried to pinpoint when things had shifted, when I'd apparently become her ex-husband without knowing it. Maybe it was when I'd gotten promoted and started working longer hours. Maybe it was when Jake started high school and needed less hands-on parenting. Maybe it was gradual, so slow I hadn't noticed. Or maybe she just decided to rewrite our history to fit her narrative. I crafted my next message carefully. That's rough. What happened, if you don't mind me asking? We just grew apart. He's a good guy, but we wanted different things. He's very predictable, routine. I realized I needed someone who could surprise me. Predictable. The word stung because it was probably accurate. I got up at 6:30 every morning, made coffee, checked emails, kissed her goodbye, or tried to, and drove the same route to work. I came home, helped with homework, made dinner twice a week, watched Netflix, and went to sleep. Rinse and repeat. When had predictable become a character flaw? I looked at her sleeping form, peaceful and innocent in the darkness. Her phone was tucked under her pillow, still glowing faintly through the fabric. I understand, I typed. Predictable can be suffocating. What kind of surprises are you looking for? Her response revealed more than she probably intended. Spontaneous trips, deep conversations that last until sunrise, someone who sees me as more than just a wife and mother, someone who makes me feel alive again. The words hit like a physical blow. When was the last time I'd made her feel alive? When was the last time we'd talked until sunrise about anything other than schedules and responsibilities? But instead of guilt, I felt something else rising. Anger. She was painting me as the villain in her story, the boring husband who'd failed to keep her interested. Never mind that she'd stopped initiating conversations years ago. Never mind that every spontaneous suggestion I'd made lately had been met with excuses about work or exhaustion. She was rewriting our marriage to justify her betrayal. I decided to push further. Sounds like you know exactly what you want. Have you found it yet? I'm hopeful. I've been talking to a few interesting men. There's one in particular. He's different, confident, successful. He makes me feel like a woman again, not just someone's wife. Trent. Had to be. That's great. When do you think you'll be ready to move forward with the divorce? A long pause. Then, soon. I'm just trying to figure out the best way to handle it. I don't want to hurt anyone unnecessarily. Unnecessarily. As if there was a version of this that wouldn't destroy everything we'd built together. I set the tablet aside and stared at the ceiling, processing what I'd learned. My wife of 15 years was actively planning to leave me, had been emotionally cheating for months, and was using our shared characteristics to attract other men while describing me as a boring roommate to anyone who'd listen. The old Rowan would have woken her up, demanded explanations, probably ended up apologizing for being predictable. But something had shifted in the last hour. Maybe it was the clinical way she'd dissected our marriage for strangers. Maybe it was the casual cruelty of listing herself as single while wearing my ring, or maybe it was the realization that I'd been playing defense in my own life for too long. I picked up the tablet and typed one final message. I have to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest. What would you do if your husband found out about this? The typing indicator appeared and disappeared several times. Finally, I don't know. I hope he'd understand that sometimes people grow apart and want different things. Why do you ask? Just curious about the ethics of it all. Some people might consider this cheating. I'm not doing anything physical. I'm just talking to people, exploring my options. My marriage has been over for months. This is just me being honest about it. Honest. She was calling this honesty. I took a screenshot of the conversation, then another of her profile, then started systematically documenting everything I'd found. If she wanted to play games with our marriage, she'd learn that predictable didn't mean stupid. But first, I had one more message to send. One last question, and this might seem random, but what's the story behind that scar above your eyebrow? The one you mentioned in your profile? I waited, watching the typing indicator pulse in the darkness. This was the test. The scar wasn't from Jake's wiffle ball accident. That had happened to her sister. Alyssa's scar came from falling off her bike when she was 7, a story she'd told me on our third date and never mentioned again. If she told the truth, she'd reveal she'd been lying in her profile. If she stuck with the wiffle ball story, she'd prove she was willing to fabricate intimate details to seem more appealing to strangers. Her response came back. "Oh, that! My son hit me with a wiffle ball last summer. I should have ducked." It was embarrassing but kind of funny afterward. She'd chosen the lie. I screenshotted that too, then closed the app and powered down the tablet. Alyssa stirred beside me, rolling over in her sleep. Her phone slipped out from under the pillow, and I could see the notification light blinking, probably wondering why her new match had gone quiet. I lay there in the darkness, mind racing with possibilities. She thought she was hunting, but she'd just become prey. She thought she was writing her own story, but she'd handed me the pen. Tomorrow, I'd start writing a different ending. Morning came with its usual routine: coffee, emails, the sound of kids getting ready for school, but everything felt different now, like I was watching a play where I finally understood the plot. Alyssa moved through her morning ritual: shower, coffee, checking her phone while pretending to read news. I counted 3 separate occasions when she smiled at her screen, the kind of smile I hadn't seen directed at me in months. "Working late again tonight?" I asked, buttering toast for the kids. "Probably. We're implementing new harassment policies, and the review process is taking forever." She didn't look up from her phone. Harassment policies. The irony wasn't lost on me. Jake wandered into the kitchen, 15 and perpetually hungry. "Dad, can you drive me to school? Mom's been distracted lately." "Jake," Alyssa snapped, finally looking up. "I'm not distracted." "You texted me 'sounds good' when I asked if I could drop out and become a professional gamer." She had the grace to look embarrassed. I was multitasking. "I'll drive you," I said, ruffling Jake's hair. He was a good kid, quiet like me, but more observant than people gave him credit for. "Ella ready?" "She's doing her hair," Jake said. Again. 12-year-old Ella appeared moments later, having inherited her mother's perfectionism and my stubborn streak. She kissed Alyssa's cheek, then mine, and grabbed her backpack. "Love you guys," Alyssa called as we headed for the garage. "Have a good day." The words sounded hollow, like lines from a script she'd memorized but stopped believing in. During the drive to school, Ella asked, "Is Mom okay? She seems different lately." Kids notice everything. Different how? She's on her phone more, and she gets this weird smile sometimes, like she's keeping a secret. "People get busy with work," I said, which wasn't exactly a lie. "Maybe." Ella didn't sound convinced. "But she used to complain about work. Now she seems happy about it." After dropping them off, I sat in the school parking lot and opened my laptop. Working remotely had its advantages, especially when you needed to conduct a thorough investigation into your own marriage. I started with the basics. Our shared bank account showed several charges I didn't recognize. A new gym membership. Alyssa had never mentioned wanting to work out. Lunch expenses that were higher than usual and at restaurants across town, nowhere near her office. A charge at Victoria's Secret from last week. I pulled up our phone records next. Her data usage had spiked in the last 2 months, and she'd been sending significantly more text messages. But the real revelation was in the call logs. 3 numbers appeared regularly, always during her lunch breaks or after work hours. A reverse lookup revealed one belonged to Trent Masters. The other 2 were unlisted, but the timing pattern suggested they were her other dating prospects. Then I did something that felt invasive but necessary. I checked our shared cloud storage. Alyssa had been backing up photos automatically for years, usually forgetting what was being saved. I found selfies I'd never seen, dozens of them, photos taken in her office bathroom, in her car, even a few in our bedroom while I was at work. She was building a portfolio, testing angles and expressions like a professional model. But it was the deleted photos that told the real story. Pictures of her with a man I didn't recognize, tall, confident, the kind of guy who wore expensive watches and drove sports cars. Trent, presumably. They were at restaurants, walking in a park, sitting close together in what looked like a hotel bar. The timestamps showed these photos were taken over the last month. While she'd been telling me she was working late, she'd been on dates. I leaned back in my car seat, processing the scope of her deception. This wasn't just emotional cheating or online flirtation. She was actively dating other men, building relationships, creating a life that didn't include me. My phone buzzed with a text from her. "Forgot to mention, girls' night with Natalie tonight. Probably be late." Girls' night. I'd bet money she was meeting Trent. I spent the rest of the morning building a comprehensive timeline. Every late night, every canceled plan, every excuse about work or friends, I cross-referenced them with her phone records, bank charges, and photo timestamps. The pattern was clear. For the last 3 months, Alyssa had been living a double life with methodical precision. She'd compartmentalized her betrayal so efficiently that I wondered if this was her first time or just the first time I'd caught her. Around noon, I got a notification from the dating app. A message from Alyssa. Hi again. Sorry I disappeared last night. Work crisis. How's your day going? I smiled grimly. She was apologizing to her husband for ignoring her husband. No problem, I typed back. I understand work pressures. What do you do again? HR director. Lots of policy reviews lately. Pretty boring stuff. What about you? IT project management. Also pretty boring, but it pays the bills. Do you enjoy your work? I used to. Lately I've been thinking about making some changes. New job, new city maybe, fresh start. New city. She was planning to disappear entirely. That's exciting. What's driving the change? Just feeling stuck, you know? Like I'm living someone else's life instead of my own. Someone else's life. Our life. The life we'd built together, the home we'd created, the children we were raising, all of it was someone else's life to her. I was formulating a response when my phone rang. Alyssa's name appeared on the screen. Hey, I answered, curious how she'd handle talking to two different versions of me simultaneously. Hi, honey. Listen, I need to work through lunch today, so I might not be reachable for a few hours. Big presentation this afternoon. I could hear traffic in the background. She wasn't at the office. No problem. I'll be working from home anyway. Good luck with the presentation. Thanks. Love you. The words came automatically, muscle memory from years of routine phone calls. But they felt like lies now, empty syllables with no meaning behind them. After she hung up, I went back to the dating app. Her status showed as active, and she was typing a response to my last message. Sorry, work call. Where were we? You were telling me about wanting a fresh start. Right. It's scary but exciting. I feel like I've been sleepwalking for years, and I'm finally waking up. Sleepwalking. Is that how she saw our marriage? A unconscious drift through shared routines and responsibilities? Maybe she wasn't entirely wrong. When had we stopped really talking? When had we stopped making an effort to surprise each other, to grow together instead of just existing in parallel? But recognizing the problem didn't excuse the solution. If she was unhappy, we could have worked on it. Counseling, date nights, honest conversations about what we both needed. Instead, she'd chosen deception and betrayal. What woke you up? I asked, meeting someone who reminded me what it felt like to be desired, to be seen as a woman instead of just a role I was playing. Trent again, the confident, successful man who made her feel alive. Tell me about him. He's different, strong, successful. He knows what he wants and goes after it. When he looks at me, I feel like the most important person in the world. I wondered if Trent knew he was competing with a husband who didn't know there was a competition, if he cared that the woman he was pursuing was married with children. Sounds special. How did you meet? Through this app, actually. We've been talking for a few weeks, went on a couple of dates. He's everything I didn't know I was missing. A couple of dates. She made it sound casual, but the photos suggested something more serious. What's your husband like? I asked, unable to resist. A long pause. He's safe, reliable, a good father. But he's also predictable to the point of being invisible. I don't think he's really seen me in years. Invisible? The word stung because it contained truth. I had become invisible, not just to her but to myself. When had I stopped trying to be interesting? When had I accepted that marriage meant settling into comfortable routines? But her invisibility was chosen. She'd stopped sharing her thoughts, her dreams, her frustrations. She'd withdrawn emotionally while blaming me for the distance. Have you tried talking to him about how you feel? What's the point? He's happy with the way things are. He comes home, checks his emails, helps with homework, watches TV, and goes to sleep. Every day, exactly the same. He doesn't want adventure or passion or growth. He wants predictability. She was describing me like a robot, a collection of habits and routines without depth or complexity. But she'd never asked what I wanted. She'd assumed my contentment and used it to justify her betrayal. Maybe he'd surprise you if you gave him the chance. I don't think so. Some people are just limited. They find their comfort zone and never leave it. Limited. That's what 15 years of marriage had earned me in her estimation. I set the phone aside and walked to the kitchen window, looking out at the backyard where we'd hosted birthday parties and barbecues, where the kids had learned to ride bikes and climb trees. Was all of that meaningless to her? Just predictable domestic routine? Or was she rewriting history to make her betrayal easier to justify? My phone buzzed with another message. Sorry, I'm probably being too negative. Divorce brings out the worst in people, I guess. Divorce. She was talking about it like a foregone conclusion, not even pretending there was hope for reconciliation. It's okay. Everyone needs to vent sometimes. When do you think it'll be final? Soon, I hope. I've already talked to a lawyer, just waiting for the right moment to tell him. Already talked to a lawyer. She was further along in this process than I'd realized. How do you think he'll react? Probably shocked at first. He doesn't pay enough attention to see it coming, but honestly, I think he'll be relieved. We've both been going through the motions for months. Going through the motions. Maybe she was right about that part. But relief? She had no idea what I was feeling because she'd never bothered to ask. I spent the afternoon documenting everything I'd learned, building a comprehensive file of evidence. Screenshots, bank records, phone logs, photos, enough proof to support whatever legal action might become necessary. But more than that, I was building a strategy. She thought she held all the cards because she'd been planning this in secret. She thought I was predictable, invisible, limited. She was about to learn how wrong she could be. The restaurant she'd chosen for her girls' night was downtown, upscale, the kind of place that required reservations and served portions that looked like art. I sat in my car across the street, watching the entrance through a telephoto lens I'd borrowed from Jake's photography class. Alyssa arrived first, 15 minutes early, wearing a dress I'd never seen before. Red, form-fitting, expensive. She'd had her hair done too, professional highlights that caught the restaurant's ambient lighting perfectly. She looked beautiful, more beautiful than she'd looked for me in months. Trent arrived exactly on time, and I got my first good look at the man who was stealing my wife. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. He moved with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no, never faced a challenge he couldn't overcome with charm or money. He kissed her cheek at the entrance, his hand lingering on her lower back as they walked inside. The gesture was possessive, intimate, the touch of a man who considered her his. I waited 30 minutes, then walked into the restaurant. They were seated in a corner booth, leaning close together over wine glasses and shared appetizers. She was laughing at something he'd said, her hand resting on his arm, her wedding ring catching the candlelight. I approached their table slowly, savoring the moment before everything changed. Alyssa. She looked up, and her face went through a series of expressions: surprise, confusion, guilt, then a forced smile that didn't reach her eyes. Rowan, what are you doing here? Having dinner with my wife, I said, pulling out a chair and sitting down without invitation. Though I seemed to be interrupting something, Trent straightened in his seat, his confident demeanor flickering. I'm sorry. Who are you? Her husband, I said, extending my hand with mock politeness. Rowan Kerrick. And you must be Trent Masters, 40, divorced, drives a Mustang, and apparently makes my wife feel like a woman again. The color drained from Alyssa's face. How do you know about your dating profile? Your secret conversations? Your plans to file for divorce without telling me? I pulled out my phone and placed it on the table, screen facing them. Because we matched, sweetheart. Last night. We had a lovely conversation about what a predictable, invisible, limited husband you have. Trent looked between us, clearly calculating his options. Look, man, I didn't know she was still married. She told me you were separated. Emotionally separated for 6 months? I said, quoting her exact words. Isn't that right, honey? Alyssa's composure cracked. Rowan, please. Can we talk about this at home? Why? So you can gaslight me some more? Tell me I'm being paranoid and insecure? I leaned back in my chair, enjoying their discomfort. I have to say, Trent, your girlfriend is quite the storyteller. Did she tell you about the scar above her eyebrow? The touching story about her son and the wiffle ball? Trent glanced at Alyssa's forehead, confusion evident. That's actually her sister's scar, I continued. Alyssa fell off her bike when she was 7, but I guess the truth wasn't romantic enough for her profile. You're being ridiculous, Alyssa said, but her voice lacked conviction. Am I? Let's see what else I discovered today. I pulled up the photos on my phone, sliding it across the table. Nice pictures, by the way. The hotel bar looked expensive. Trent's confidence evaporated completely. I think I should go. Actually, I think you should stay, I said. I'd like to hear your perspective on dating married women. Is it a hobby or more of a professional pursuit? Rowan, stop, Alyssa hissed. You're making a scene. I'm making a scene? I'm not the one who's been lying to everyone for months. I gestured around the restaurant where other diners were starting to notice our table. These people probably think you're cheating on your boyfriend with your husband. Trent stood up abruptly. I'm leaving. This is insane. Tell me something first, I said, not moving from my chair. When she described her marriage to you, did she mention our kids, Jake and Ella, or were they just inconvenient details that didn't fit her narrative? He froze, halfway out of his seat. Kids? 2 of them, 15 and 12. They're at home right now, probably wondering why Mommy's been so distracted lately. I smiled coldly. But don't worry, I'm sure she would have mentioned them eventually, maybe after you'd invested a little more time and money. Trent looked at Alyssa with disgust. You told me you didn't have kids. I never said that, she protested weakly. You said you were looking for a fresh start, a new life. How exactly does that work with 2 children? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Alyssa opened her mouth, then closed it, unable to formulate an answer that wouldn't damn her further. She was planning to move to a new city, I offered helpfully. Fresh start, remember? Though I'm not sure what she intended to do with the kids. Maybe weekend visits? This is insane, Trent muttered, grabbing his jacket. You're both insane. He stormed out, leaving Alyssa and me alone at the table with 2 wine glasses and the wreckage of her carefully constructed fantasy. Are you happy now? She asked, tears forming in her eyes. Happy? My wife has been cheating on me for months, planning to abandon our family and lying to everyone about our marriage. Why wouldn't I be happy? You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You were bored, so you decided to blow up our lives. You found some excitement with a stranger and convinced yourself it was love. You rewrote our entire history to justify your betrayal. It's not that simple. Actually, it is. You made a choice. Multiple choices. Every lie, every secret date, every time you looked me in the eye and pretended everything was normal. Those were choices. She wiped her eyes, smearing her carefully applied makeup. What do you want from me? I want you to stop lying. To me, to yourself, to our kids. I want you to take responsibility for what you've done instead of blaming me for being predictable. And then what? We go back to the way things were? I considered the question seriously. Could we go back? Did I even want to? I don't know, I said finally. But I know we can't move forward until you stop running away. She stared at her wine glass, swirling the liquid absently. I felt invisible, Rowan, like I was disappearing a little more each day. So you made me invisible instead. You erased me from your profile, from your conversations, from your future plans. How is that better? It's not. But I didn't know how to fix us, and I was tired of trying. When did you try? When did you tell me you were unhappy? When did you suggest counseling or ask for changes or even hint that our marriage was in trouble? She had no answer because there wasn't one. She'd given up without fighting, chosen betrayal over communication. I want to go home, she said quietly. Good, because we need to talk to the kids. They deserve to know what's happening. What are you going to tell them? The truth, that their mother has been lying to everyone, including herself, that their parents' marriage is in serious trouble because one of us decided to look for happiness somewhere else instead of working to find it at home? That's not fair. Fair? I laughed bitterly. You want to talk about fair? Is it fair that Jake thinks you're distracted because of work? Is it fair that Ella's worried about you but doesn't know why? Is it fair that I've been living with a stranger for months without knowing it? She flinched at each question, finally understanding the scope of her deception's impact. I never meant for it to go this far, she whispered. But it did, and now we have to deal with the consequences. I stood up, leaving money on the table for the wine we hadn't finished. Are you coming home, or do you have another date scheduled? I'm coming home. Good, because tomorrow we're going to figure out how to clean up this mess. And Alyssa? No more lies, no more secrets. If you want to save this marriage, you're going to have to fight for it instead of running away from it. I walked out of the restaurant, leaving her to follow or not. For the first time in months, the choice was entirely hers. The drive home was silent, 2 cars following the same route to a destination that no longer felt certain. I kept checking my rearview mirror, half expecting Alyssa to turn off at some point, to choose escape over confrontation, but she stayed behind me, her headlights steady in the darkness. The kids were in the living room when we walked in, Jake sprawled on the couch with his laptop, Ella curled in the armchair reading. Normal teenage evening activities in what was about to become a very abnormal night. How was girls' night? Ella asked without looking up from her book. Alyssa froze in the doorway, clearly unprepared for the question. It was educational, I said. Kids, we need to talk. Family meeting. Jake groaned. Did I forget to do something? No, buddy. This isn't about you or Ella. It's about your mom and me. Something in my tone made them both look up, suddenly alert to the tension crackling between their parents. What's wrong? Ella asked, her voice small. I looked at Alyssa, giving her a chance to start the conversation. She stood there, still wearing her date dress, makeup smeared from crying, looking like a stranger in her own home. Your mother has something to tell you, I said when the silence stretched too long. Rowan, please. Tell them, Alyssa. Tell them why you've been distracted. Tell them about your dating profile and your new boyfriend and your plans for a fresh start. Jake's laptop slid off his knees. What? Ella's book fell to the floor. Mom? Alyssa collapsed onto the ottoman, burying her face in her hands. This isn't how I wanted you to find out. Find out what? Jake demanded, his voice cracking. I sat down across from them, suddenly exhausted by the weight of the truth we were about to share. Your mother has been seeing other men, I said gently. She's been planning to leave our family. The words hit them like physical blows. Ella started crying immediately, silent tears streaming down her face. Jake just stared, processing information that didn't fit his understanding of the world. Is that true? He asked Alyssa. She nodded without lifting her head. Why? Ella whispered. I was unhappy, Alyssa said, finally looking at her daughter. I felt trapped and invisible and like I was disappearing. So you decided to make us disappear instead? Jake's voice was cold, older than his 15 years. Dad says you were planning to leave. I was confused. I thought maybe everyone would be happier. Without you? Ella interrupted. You thought we'd be happier without our mom. I thought you'd be better off with parents who weren't miserable. Were you miserable, Dad? Jake asked me. The question caught me off guard. Was I miserable? Bored, maybe? Complacent? Definitely. But miserable? I was comfortable, I said honestly. Maybe too comfortable. I stopped trying to make our marriage interesting because I thought what we had was enough. But you didn't cheat, Ella said fiercely. No, I didn't cheat. And you weren't planning to abandon us. Never, not ever. Jake stood up abruptly. I need to process this. Can I go to my room? Of course, I said. But Jake, none of this is your fault, or Ella's. This is about choices your mother and I made, not anything you did wrong. He nodded and headed upstairs, his shoulders carrying a burden no teenager should have to bear. Ella remained curled in her chair, staring at her mother with a mixture of hurt and confusion. Are you getting divorced? She asked. I don't know, I said. That depends on whether your mother wants to fight for our family or continue running away from it. I want to fight, Alyssa said quietly. I want to fix this. Then you're going to have to do more than want it, I replied. You're going to have to earn it. Ella wiped her eyes. What does that mean? It means your mother needs to prove that we're more important than her need for excitement, that our family is worth the hard work of rebuilding trust. How? Alyssa asked. First, you end all contact with every man you've been talking to. Delete the dating profiles, block their numbers, make it clear that you're committed to saving your marriage. She nodded. Second, you find a therapist. Individual counseling to figure out why you chose betrayal over communication, and couples counseling for us. Another nod. Third, complete transparency. I get access to your phone, your email, your social media. No passwords, no privacy, no secrets. That seems extreme, she said. Extreme is having a secret dating life while married with children. This is accountability. Ella looked between us. Are you going to be okay? I hope so, sweetheart, but it's going to take time and work, and there are no guarantees. What about us, Jake and me? You're the most important thing in this whole mess, I said. Whatever happens between your mother and me, we're both going to love you and take care of you. That will never change. Alyssa finally spoke up. I'm sorry, Ella. I'm so sorry you had to find out this way. I never wanted to hurt you or Jake. But you did hurt us, Ella said simply. You hurt all of us. I know, and I'm going to spend however long it takes making it right. Ella studied her mother's face, looking for sincerity or deception with the brutal honesty that only children possess. Okay, she said finally. But if you lie again, if you hurt Dad or us again, I won't forgive you. The words carried weight that surprised all of us. 12-year-old Ella had just drawn a line in the sand, establishing boundaries that her mother would have to respect. I understand, Alyssa whispered. Can I go check on Jake? Ella asked. Of course. She left us alone in the living room, surrounded by the detritus of a normal evening that had become anything but normal. What now? Alyssa asked. Now you prove you mean what you say. You delete those profiles tonight in front of me. You call Trent and anyone else you've been talking to and tell them it's over. You start the hard work of rebuilding what you destroyed. And if I do all that, if I prove I'm committed, then we'll see if there's anything left to save. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands and opened the dating app. I watched as she deleted her profile, then blocked Trent's number, then went through her contacts, removing every trace of her secret life. It was a start, but trust, once broken, doesn't heal with the deletion of a few apps. It requires time, consistency, and the daily choice to choose transparency over deception. "I love you," she said as she handed me her phone. "I know I have a terrible way of showing it, but I do love you." "I love you too," I replied. "But love isn't enough anymore. We need honesty, respect, and commitment. We need to rebuild our marriage from the ground up." "Can we do that?" "I don't know, but for the first time in months, we're at least being honest about the problem." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I'm scared." "Good. You should be. You risked everything for a fantasy, and now you have to live with the consequences. Will you help me? Will you try to forgive me?" I looked at this woman I'd loved for 15 years, who'd become a stranger, who was asking for a chance to become my wife again. "I'll try," I said. "But Alyssa, if you betray us again, if you choose deception over truth even once, it's over. No second chances, no explanations, no forgiveness. Do you understand?" "I understand." "Then let's see if we can save our marriage." It wasn't a happy ending or a romantic reconciliation. It was just the beginning of a long, difficult process that might or might not succeed. But for the first time in months, we were both present for it. The rest would depend on whether she meant what she said and whether I could learn to trust her again. Only time would tell. 3 months later, I sat in Dr. Patricia Morrison's office, watching Alyssa fidget with her wedding ring, a nervous habit she'd developed since we'd started counseling. The ring had been off her finger more often than during her dating phase, but now she twisted it constantly, as if reminding herself it was there. "How are you feeling about the progress you've made?" Dr. Morrison asked. "Like we're building something new instead of trying to fix something broken," I said, "which is harder than I expected." Alyssa nodded. "I keep wanting to go back to the way things were before, but Rowan's right. We can't go back. We have to go forward." The last 3 months had been the most difficult of our marriage, but also the most honest. Alyssa had followed through on every commitment she'd made that night. She'd deleted all traces of her secret life, started individual therapy, and submitted to complete transparency with her devices and schedule. More importantly, she'd begun the hard work of understanding why she'd chosen betrayal over communication. "I was addicted to the excitement," she'd explained during one particularly brutal session. "Not just the attention from other men, but the secrecy itself. Having a hidden life made me feel powerful, in control." "Control over what?" Dr. Morrison had asked. "Over my own story. In my marriage, I felt like a supporting character in someone else's narrative. Online, I was the protagonist." It was a revelation that had stung, partly because it contained truth. I had become complacent, assuming that our shared routines and responsibilities constituted a satisfying relationship, but her response to that complacency had been devastating and selfish. "The kids are doing better," Alyssa said now. "Ella's starting to trust me again." Jake had been harder to win back. His relationship with his mother remained cordial but distant, and he'd started spending more time with me, as if choosing sides in a war that was supposed to be over. "He's protecting you," Dr. Morrison had explained. "He's old enough to understand the scope of the betrayal, and he's angry on your behalf." "I don't want him to be angry," I'd replied. "I want him to have a relationship with his mother." "That's going to take time, and it's going to require Alyssa to prove herself to him, not just to you." The proving had been ongoing and exhausting. Every late meeting at work required verification. Every girls' night needed detailed itineraries and check-ins. Every unexplained mood or distant expression triggered suspicion and the need for reassurance. "I know it's hard," Alyssa had said during a particularly difficult week. "I know you're tired of monitoring me like a child, but I understand why it's necessary." "Do you resent it?" I'd asked. "Sometimes. But then I remember that I chose this. I created this situation, and I have to live with the consequences." The consequences extended beyond our marriage. Word had spread through our social circle, despite our attempts at discretion. Some friends had chosen sides, others had simply distanced themselves from the drama. Alyssa had lost several close friendships, particularly with women who saw her betrayal as a threat to their own marriages. "People are watching us," she'd observed after a particularly awkward encounter at the grocery store, "waiting to see if we make it. Does that bother you?" "It motivates me. I want to prove that we're stronger than what I did to us." But strength, we'd learned, wasn't just about surviving the crisis. It was about building something better from the wreckage. "What's different now?" Dr. Morrison asked during our current session. "We talk," I said. "Really talk, not just coordinate schedules and discuss the kids." "About what?" "Everything. Our fears, our dreams, our frustrations, things we should have been discussing all along." Alyssa leaned forward. "I told Rowan last week that I've always wanted to take a photography class. It's something I've thought about for years but never mentioned." "And I told her that I've been thinking about starting my own consulting business," I added, something I'd been considering but never discussed because I thought she valued security over risk. "These conversations are happening because we almost lost everything," Alyssa said, "because I realized that keeping parts of myself hidden led to feeling invisible, which led to seeking validation elsewhere. It was progress, but fragile progress. There were still difficult days, moments when trust felt impossible and forgiveness seemed like a luxury we couldn't afford. I had a panic attack last week," I admitted. "Alyssa was 20 minutes late coming home from work, and I couldn't reach her phone. I was convinced she was with someone else." "How did you handle it?" "I called her office directly. She was in a meeting that ran long, exactly like she'd texted me. But for those 20 minutes, I was back in that restaurant, discovering her betrayal all over again." "And how did Alyssa respond when you told her about the panic attack?" "She cried," I said, glancing at my wife. "She held me and cried and apologized for the 100th time." "I realized that my actions didn't just hurt him once," Alyssa said. "They created a wound that keeps reopening. Every time he doubts me, every time he questions my whereabouts or my motives, it's because I taught him not to trust me." "How does that make you feel?" "Responsible, sad, determined to keep proving that I'm trustworthy, even when it's exhausting." "And Rowan? How does it feel to live with that level of vigilance?" "Exhausting," I said honestly, "but also necessary. I can't just flip a switch and trust again. It has to be earned back, day by day, choice by choice." "Do you think you're making progress?" I considered the question. 3 months ago, I'd been living with a stranger who'd been systematically betraying our family. Today, I was sitting with a woman who was working hard to become someone worthy of trust again. "Yes," I said. "Slow progress, but real progress." "What does the future look like to you now?" "Uncertain," Alyssa said, "but hopeful. We're building something new instead of trying to resurrect something that was already failing." "I'm cautiously optimistic," I added. "We're doing the work, having the conversations, making the changes, but I also know that trust takes time to rebuild, and there are no guarantees." "What would success look like?" "A marriage where we both feel seen and valued," Alyssa said. "Where we choose each other every day instead of just defaulting to routine." "A partnership where we face problems together instead of separately," I said. "Where we're honest about our needs and fears instead of hiding them." Dr. Morrison smiled. "Those are good goals, achievable goals, if you both continue doing the work." As we left the office, Alyssa took my hand, a gesture that still felt tentative but increasingly natural. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For giving me a chance to earn you back, for not giving up when it would have been easier. Thank you for doing the work, for choosing us over your need for excitement." "It wasn't really excitement I was looking for," she said. "It was connection. I just went looking for it in the wrong place. And now? Now I'm looking for it with you, where I should have been looking all along." We drove home together, to a house that was slowly becoming a home again, to children who were learning to trust their mother again, to a marriage that was being rebuilt from the foundation up. It wasn't the ending I'd expected when I first discovered her dating profile, but it was an ending I could live with. Uncertain, but hopeful, fragile, but growing stronger. And for the first time in months, that felt like enough.